Good morning, everybody. Once again for another cute session, champions using teams effectively, with the trifecta of Teams geeks here for you today. Cardo, Nash, and Stacy here to answer questions and just chat about our favorite collaboration platform. So we're glad to see you. As always, use the chat or come off mute if you got anything you want to talk about. But yeah, we can just jump right into it. So glad to see everybody.
Oh, hi, good morning. It's Glenn.
Hey, Glenn.
Got an issue at work. The good news is we received the new breakout rooms update so that people can go into Teams calendar and pre-create breakout rooms and pre-assign attendees into those breakout rooms. So that's the good news. The bad news is that they can't assign all of the attendees. Like some it works for and some it doesn't. And so they were asking me, what's up with this? And I was somebody else, I forget whether it was from Microsoft or from our organization, said, well, are you dealing with internal and external people? And the answer is no, it's only internal people. And so they were asking me, why is this that we can't pre-assign 100% of the attendees? Some of them we can't. And I said, well, I would ask you folks, but the workaround is once the meeting starts, go to breakout rooms manual and manually assign those people to the pre-built breakout rooms. But have you heard of anything or can think of any reason why this might be happening? Or
I mean, that would have been my question too, internal versus external. And if they're all internal and there's no difference in perhaps, I mean, even if they were accessing Teams in a different way, like versus web or whatever, that wouldn't matter in the pre-assignment stage. So I'm not sure. Sounds like.
Does it matter if they have accepted the meeting request or not? It shouldn't, right?
You're on mute.
I know how to be in a Teams meeting. So like the whole reason this internal external thing matters is that pre-assignment is tied to an identity. And if you've invited somebody who isn't a known identity, it's just email address, like it may or may not be something that we can support today. But if it's all internal people and their identities are all in Azure Active Directory right next to each other, we would absolutely expect all of those to work just fine. So if that's the experience today and it's not working that way, open a support case and support will run through what's happening when you try to assign those people to a breakout room that isn't working.
Well, I would ask, is it by chance I've just added them to the invite and then 20 seconds later I'm trying to pre-assign them, or because I feel like I've seen that behavior where especially when I'm in a hurry, putting some folks on a meeting and then trying to do something with them, and it's almost like Teams hasn't really caught up to the fact that I've added them yet. But like if I add them the day before and then I come and want to do something, I don't know, sometimes it works better. So I don't know if this was adding and then immediately trying to assign, or if that has come into the picture.
Okay, I don't know. I will discuss that with them. But, the meeting is March 29th, so we certainly have time to, give it a couple of days to update or whatever.
Yeah. So, yeah,
the other thing is, and I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but, before COVID, we were all working in the same building in the office together. And now that we're all working remotely at home, the other factor is what they call the last mile of pipe from your home internet service provider into your home. And so everyone is connected geographically to different Teams tenants. And can that be a factor that maybe those individuals didn't get the breakout rooms update yet? Or I don't know.
wouldn't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because even though everyone's not getting it at exactly the same time, when you release it out to GCC, they're going to be getting it like approximately the same date and time, just depending on their connection speed and so on, right?
We don't have clarity for all these features. Some of them are a percentage of users in your organization. Some of them are a percentage of tenants out there. We do not at all get clarity on how a feature is going to roll out like that. And yet we're talking the breakout room pre-assignment.
Yes.
Like that's a fully deployed feature. It if it's not there for somebody, it's broken. It should be
Okay.
there for everybody at this point, right? It shows up as launched on that roadmap.
Yeah. And of course, for sure have people hit that check for updates on their client, sign out, sign back in. That's always the best
Basics.
way that I use to make sure I
Reboot.
got the latest. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I have a smaller issue, but I'll let other people talk, and if we have time at the end, I'll come back in with my smaller issue.
He has opened the floor for
Good
everyone.
morning. It's Lori.
Hey, Laura.
How is everybody this Friday?
Doing good.
We have an interesting scenario going on, and I just was hoping I can get a little bit of information on what the end users will experience. We're enabling dial-in licensing for everybody, whereas before it was requested and only handed out to a small subset of our 20,000 users. So about 3,000 have the license. What's going to happen when we open up the floodgates? I do understand we can suppress emails. I do understand that. We just want to know what's going to happen with our 20,000 users and how they're going to see this change and dial-in licenses.
So we're not going to do 100% deep dive on this in this call,
No.
just because it would be there are caveats for your organization. But
And we'll be meeting with
generally,
Dave Jennings next week to get some more details.
so I'm going to throw a link in chat to the meeting migration service. This is the thing that when you go and change somebody's meeting settings, like giving them audio conferencing, this is the service that goes through and helps update calendar items to work with that new thing. So you've seen this before if you had Skype and went to Teams, or had Skype and went to Skype Online and then went to Teams. Like, this is the service that goes through and like updated your Skype meetings into Teams meetings. This is the service that'll go through and update your Teams meetings into Teams meetings with audio conferencing. So in general terms, if you're already a Teams organization and 17,000 of your users don't have audio conferencing, but you go and assign them, like this is the documentation we would talk about for like how to trigger the meeting migration service. Like, hey, we're going to make a change to your audio conferencing settings, or hey, we want to manually go and migrate users. And this service is going to go through and start doing that updating process for those calendar items so that they get the audio conferencing dial-in number and code attached to them. Right, so enable and disable audio conferencing for a user. That's what this exists for. Typically, an end user does not notice or care. Right, their existing meetings magically got this. Their future meetings have it on there. It's generally a non-event, but we'd still want to communicate this as a good thing ahead of time. Like, hey, on this date, you will notice that your new meetings all have the dial-in number and your old meetings should be updated to include it as well.
And you were asking from an IT deployment kind of a perspective. Or are you also asking about it from like a value and adoption perspective as well? What will the users?
I wanted to understand a little bit of what the end users would be seeing on their end. Like, or if they get this dial-in license, are all of their meetings going to be updated?
Okay.
And then is that going to trigger a flood of emails in the environment? And Think about if we have 17,000 users and they've already scheduled their meetings out for the year, and all of a sudden they get these dial-in licenses and all of their meetings get updated. That's
you're
a
gonna
lot of noise.
on all of the internal stuff where we can just reach into the mailbox for your tenant. There's no noise. None.
Good.
For external folks, yep, it'll be an updated. Hey, this one has an update because it's got a new calendar body, and that is going to require a message to go out. You've got a meeting with Dave Jennings. He'll be able to go into like the nuts and the bolts and the flow chart and all of that.
Excellent.
Even this documentation doesn't go into that much detail because it's usually just not a thing, right? It's going to take care of going and doing that stuff inside of users' inboxes that are in your tenant where you have access to go do that.
This will be a great start. I'm just trying to avoid that blind spot that we didn't think of. And then the NSD, the National Service Desk, gets bombarded with thousands of phone calls because of something we changed. And we had that happen to us with something just recently because of an internal process. And I'm really trying to avoid it a second time around. That's all.
Yep.
This is
you
a great
do have
start.
the
Thank
option not to do this. I would highly discourage you from not using this because you'll probably have a couple of people who didn't like that you touched their meeting. And it's way better than having thousands of people have to go and update their meeting, like cancel the Teams meeting and create a new one in order to get the dial-in on it.
Right.
You will end up with many, times more help desk calls if you don't migrate the meetings than if you do. And yet you're probably going to have somebody call the help desk, which is why you should communicate this ahead of time, make sure the help desk knows what's going on and, understand how it works and all of the caveats of it. And, this was a big one that when we did this, I don't know, a year ago for one of my customers, meetings with more than 250 attendees won't be migrated because they were expecting them all to go. And yet they had like these department-wide meetings or these huge public meetings that didn't automatically get it. Yep, it's only for ones with less than 250 attendees. So be familiar with this document, and then have a list of questions ready for Dave and all of the different ways you guys manage your environment that could change how this works. That we're going to let somebody who's more familiar with your org than I am give you specific answers. These are good general answers.
But this is a good general start. Thank you.
You are so welcome. Yeah, and just maybe to bring it back up to a high level from Lori's question, for why she's asking it, like Microsoft is including audio conferencing in the E3 licensing now as of this month. So where we offered it free, you had to like accept the offer before, and not everybody had done that. Now there's still like an acceptance process, but it's more of a permanent thing where previously it was just through the end of your EA. Well, now your new EA will have this right built into it, and if you're not renewing today, you have the ability to just go and add on a $0 SKU to your account that will include it, and you would bake that into your next EA. So different mechanics on the back end of how we were doing this at the start of COVID as just a free trial that we'd extend through your agreement. Now it's just baked in with what you're paying. So yeah, if your users don't all have dial-in, which is a very important thing for inclusivity, let people work from where they're working, even if they don't have high quality internet. Yeah, dial-in is a great bridge for that. A ton of accessibility scenarios get way better when people can also dial in to a meeting as well. So since it costs nothing, go for it. Let's get that set up for folks. And yeah, hopefully, Lori, you're going to get more answers from Dave that just make you feel a lot more comfortable with this. And while it's the sort of thing you want to communicate, it should not be a negative at all to your organization, right? Hopefully only the people who are going to be mad no matter what we did are mad about this. Everybody else is going to be like, this is great. Thank you. And Ricardo threw a poll in chat just asking like who already has audio conferencing today. And there's a couple people answering no. So that's a good one. Talk to your Microsoft account team. You can have audio conferencing for all of your users. Before I would say you can have it for free because we give you a free trial that would extend your agreement. Now I'm going to flip to say you're already paying for it because it's included in the E3 licensing for everybody. And almost everybody has E3 licensing. So if you haven't turned it on for them, you're missing out on some of the value that you're writing a check to Microsoft for.
Awesome. What else is going on in Teams land today?
Well, I just noticed, this is Glenn again, in this poll that you put out, Ricardo, there was an opportunity for me to vote in the chat, and then also I got a pop-up message in the center of the screen to vote. Yep. Does it matter which one I use, or if I did both, would it count the vote twice? Or
it doesn't matter. I guess if I set this up to allow multiple votes, you could probably do both. But I think usually it just takes the one.
Okay.
Yeah.
My other question from before, I'm not really clear on this, but one of my users saved a file in Teams, and then there's you can click somewhere and go to SharePoint, and then he gets lost, and I don't know what to tell him. So if for some reason you want to click that go to SharePoint, how do you operate that? How do you work it?
So yeah. Teams does not store files. It just doesn't do that. The Teams does very little actually. Teams is the hub and the lens through which people experience other Office 365 services. So when you create a team and you're collaborating as part of a team, all of the files for that team aren't in the team, they're in the team's SharePoint site. So while we certainly expose those things to an end user in the team so that they don't have to know that SharePoint is behind the scenes, if they want to use those SharePoint features, they absolutely can. So I'll quick bring up a team. We've got our example team here, like our park expansion project. The files tab here, let's find something with files. There we go. The files tab here, all of these files are actually stored in the SharePoint site that is associated with the Office 365 group for this team. So when we hit the open in SharePoint button, we can look at this side by side, right? It's the same stuff. It's just a different view for it. And even that, like the all documents view, we can go build custom views in SharePoint or here. It's really the same thing. Where it's just Teams is the lens through which we're experiencing the document library features of SharePoint. So if they're saying, hey, I hit open in Teams and I got lost, open in SharePoint and I got lost, maybe you want to teach them SharePoint. I think really as long as you're being clear that the thing you saw in Teams, all of that really is SharePoint on the back end. If you want to be in the back end, hit open in SharePoint, you can do all that stuff. You don't have to though, right? Most everything a typical user needs is going to be right here on the team side. Go for it, Ricardo.
I like this as a controversial topic because I like to say, and so just for disclosure, I'm a full-blown SharePoint geek. SharePoint paid the bills for me as a consultant for many years, but I'm now in the camp where I would love for you to not know anything about SharePoint, right? To go to Teams, to go to the Files tab and do your file stuff. It is absolutely true. SharePoint's the back end power behind all that. But from an end user perspective, I would love for you to just get used to Teams and the Files tab. So to me, that's an interesting, topic, and it just kind of just how you want to train users. In the past, SharePoint training was a big part of our end user training. Today, is it possible that I can avoid SharePoint training and just do Teams training and files? But all that being said, maybe some key aspects of this for that user that's getting lost is just understanding that for every channel in their team, there is a corresponding folder in that backend SharePoint site for each channel. So when they do flip over there, that's essentially what they should see. They'll be locked into the, not locked in, but they'll start in the folder of the channel that they just came from. But if they start navigating up to documents, they should see a match, as Nash is showing here, for a folder for every channel. And at the basics, that is, essentially all they really need to know. One other point, though, where they might get some confusion is if someone has been fiddling around in the SharePoint site and has made additional folders, then it might get a little more confusing as they see folders that don't match up to teams. And that's totally a legit thing to do, but I could see where that could cause some confusion. So two perspectives, I guess, on that answer, and maybe a bigger answer than you were expecting for that kind of question. Yeah. But does that make sense?
Yes, all information is good.
Can you put on speakerphone?
Thanks for the assistance. Yeah, thank you for that information. And I see Jim has a SharePoint question, so I'll yield to him.
So I see there you create SharePoint pages and bubble them up to tab status. Yep. Page formatting gets hosed. Is there a saying that could prevent that from happening? So you SharePoint pages that have like 3-column formatting, and that gets messed up when you turn them into tabs. Because I usually see those SharePoint pages pretty elegantly come in, but maybe I've never tried a 3-column layout, but I usually see them come in pretty elegantly into the tab concept in Teams. So
I don't know if it's a screen resolution thing or something of that nature, but usually everything defaults to a single column.
Oh, now, so that could be the responsive design of that page trying to kick in. I still would have imagined it would want to honor your choice of a 3-column layout, but I could see it trying to be, just from a, shrink, being responsive, it's trying to show it in a, like the same way it would do for a mobile phone, which to Teams' defense, you wouldn't probably want to honor the 3-column format on a mobile phone because that's just going to look super small. So, yeah, it kind of depends on exactly what that layout you've created there.
Oh, yeah, Nash, that's a good point. You have a couple of options, Jim. It'd be interesting to see if you have the website tab to see if you use that URL from SharePoint in a website tab, if it does a better job of keeping those column structures in place. The other thing I would mention is there is a expand the view that's going to collapse that panel on the left side to give you more real estate in Teams.
Right.
I don't know if you've tried that with your 3-column layout and if that's helpful at all, but I just wanted to mention that in case you weren't aware.
Well, the end user would have to know to click on that.
True.
Default settings. So,
to Nash's point, the website tab is a powerful one, such that it sometimes can do what some of these other tabs are doing. The SharePoint tab, even the list tab, right? I could use a website tab with a URL to a list, and it'll probably look the same as if I use the list tab. But to the point, there might be, especially in this case with this 3-column layout, there might be some uniqueness to natively using that SharePoint tab versus website that might give a different experience.
Okay, I'll try that. You mentioned lists. Real quick, do you have a link that you could put into the chat that would explain how to create a list using an external data source?
So, so I'm thinking that's back in the day that was a BCS, or they called it BCS or BDC, the Business Connectivity Service. This is old school SharePoint here. And that's how you got that done. And so it was a separate service related to bringing that external data in. And I'm assuming you mean live data, not just bringing in some snapshot like creating it from a spreadsheet.
No, it's not going to be live. It's going to end up being a read-only access but I was thinking of trying to get it into the list format to keep it.
Yeah.
Well, for example, I've got a listing of people's birthdays. I wanted to create a kind of calendar list of those people. But as people move in and out of the organization, I want that to be somewhat dynamic so that I don't have people that, have separated months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So the thought was in the file that I have in a different program, make that available. And there is an extension to do ODBC, but then to bubble it up into list.
Yeah, lists, you aren't going to just be able to point it at an ODBC connection, but it just doesn't work that way. The data source is the list. So if you want to put things in a list, you're going to have something that's getting that data and putting it in the list. So if you wanted to use Power Automate for that, great. The SharePoint connector will give you the steps to add to a list. And then you're looking at, well, what's the connector that would go and talk to my external data source? If it's a SQL database, great. Yeah, there's a premium connector for SQL or any of your traditional database things. You've got some real generic ones like the HTTP connector. So if there's like a REST API on your other thing, your original data source, you could go do REST calls and then with that data go and populate a SharePoint list. But you are looking at building a custom solution at this point to go and grab data from another source and be populating it into a list and then keep that list up to date. A list is not going to have your data source actually directly be another database.
Except for there is a concept of an external list, which was one that was tied to a data service that kept it synced. It's been many years since I've gone down this road. So I'm wondering what the modern version of this is and whether it's more of a Power Automate, Power Apps kind of a play. But so I don't know, if Jim, if you're kind of using that knowledge of what we used to have, what I call back in the day. Yeah, so this here probably is a good example. But yeah, there used to be, just like I could select a calendar, a list, there used to be an external list as an option. And then I tell it where to point and it assumes I've already created a BCS connection and life was good. And I was literally tied into the database. I could make a change in the list, it changes in the database and back and forth. Sounds like that's sort of what you're looking for. It's just been so long. Yeah, BCS and Secure Store. This is what I used to do years ago, but I have not looked at this.
Looks like they still do it.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was a thing. I had never heard of this before.
Yeah, it was a great way to get end users into a database without having to be database people. To them, it looked like a list. It is actually tied directly into some SQL or Oracle database. They were making changes to data as SharePoint users and could care less about data, table formats and blah, blah, blah. So it's powerful, good stuff. I just don't know what the modern day, whether it's still there or what.
Well, it looks like it is, Ricardo. This article that Nash is sharing was updated in February.
Nice.
And it's walking through all the steps here.
Right. So one of the things that I hate about one of the things I hate about our marketing team is we no longer call SharePoint Online. We just call it SharePoint. So I'm pretty sure we're talking about SharePoint Online, but it could be that we're talking about SharePoint Server here, and I don't know. But marketing says the product is now SharePoint, not SharePoint Online, and therefore,
Yeah, and in
you don't
the
need
link,
Google things.
the link you use, there is a diagram, and they do say SharePoint Online as they got a little cloud picture there. Yeah, that one right there.
Okay. Notice the word SharePoint Online exists nowhere in writing.
Right.
Okay, I got to run to another meeting. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Have an awesome weekend.
And I thank you for bringing back all the good nostalgic feels for me today.
I don't know about being old school like this, but have a good one.
Right on. Thanks.
I got to go track down my glasses.
Uh-oh.
I'm like, why can't I read this? Oh, that's right. My glasses would go.
Hope you find them, Nash.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah.
Hope this was helpful, everybody, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, guys.